You've seen this fine physique. You've heard chips with everything, and now you're thinking, we can see that. Well, fellow Toastmasters, most welcome guests, I'm not talking about the sliced and fried potato, which I am particularly fond, but the integrated electronic circuit, or the chip as it's commonly known. The very heart of all those gadgets designed to make our life simple. Chips first entered our life with a disembodied voice on the telephone, and looking around, I can see you're all far too young to remember Tim, the speaking clock. But in those days, we weren't used to speaking to machines, so when my mother had finished getting the time, she would say, "Thank you so much." At the time, I thought, how daft is she, speaking to a machine, not realising what was about to come. Then we had the triumph of Toastmasters, the answer phone. Have you ever realised what brilliant messages Toastmasters leave on answer phones? Even though mainly the tape runs out before the message. Now, of course, we have the dreaded autoresponder. Press 1 for sales. Press 2 for accounts. Press 3 to waste your entire phone bill listening to my voice. This doesn't work for me. By the time we got to 3, I forgot what 1 and 2 were anyway. But even though they're operated by machines, it's reassuring to know that they're still programmed by humans, as proven by an Australian responder, which said, "Press 1 if you speak English, press 2 if you don't." Now the chip has entered the mighty mobile phone. This is mine, and it's pretty sophisticated. It's got my diary, my contacts. I can use Word, Excel, surf the internet, take pictures, and listen to music. Oh, and it makes phone calls. These things are now almost so sophisticated they should only be operated by teenagers. In fact, when I bought it, the man in the shop said there isn't anything this phone doesn't do. I found something. It doesn't float. I was doing the washing up and I picked it up and zipped like a bar of soap, it went straight into the bowl. That was the end of that. Thankfully it was insured, although at first they tried to avoid paying me. They said it was my fault for trying to multitask. But in the end they relented and sent me their very latest phone, and I found to my horror that it had on it sat-nav. Still, I like to give technology a chance. So I went to my car. Have you noticed now you can't even get in your car without a chip? They're in all the keys. Bit to lock, bit to unlock, bit to lock, bit to unlock. And we get brainwashed by it, don't we? How many of us find ourselves stood in front of the house door pressing the button wondering why it won't open? Just me then. Well, I set off down the road and the sat-nav sprang into life. Take the first turning left. Turn right in 200 yards. Oh my goodness, they developed the first digital wife. But don't worry, ladies, the chip is coming to your area of expertise too. Shopping. Recently I went into my local supermarket, which to avoid embarrassment will remain Tesco's. And there it was in the corner, that till from hell. The self-service till, which some wag had put a card over the top. Express till. Ah! Still, I like to give technology a chance. So when I finished my shopping, I went up, pressed the start button. Scan first item and place in packing area. Unexpected item in packing area. Unexpected? How could it be unexpected? It wasn't as if I slipped down the aisle and up behind it and dropped it in. It had just scanned it. It must have known it was coming. I tried to reason with it, but it was unrepentant. Remove unexpected item from packing area. Do you know, if you go into the bigger supermarkets, these tills have belts on them, so that when you scan your item, put it on the belt, and it takes it down the far end of the till. Why? I'm at this end doing my shopping. What would I want it all down the other end of the till for? Do you now have to scan it, put it on the belt, run down the far end, put it in the bag, get back in time to put this one on? And if these tills find an unexpected item, they go in reverse and bring all his shopping back. Must be why they call it progress. Anyway, finally I get all my shopping through, and all I've got to do is pay. Scan your club card, select debit card, card in machine. Simple. I do it. Nothing. Then 10 seconds later, insert card in machine. And do you remember the bit where I thought my mother was daft speaking to a machine? I now find myself in Tesco's going, I just put that card in the damn machine! Much to the amusement of my fellow shoppers. Finally it takes my money, and I grab my shopping and receipt and flee the store. And as I go out through the doors, I hear in the distance, "We were shopping from Swacky area, and thank you for shopping at Tesco's." That's the way it's going to be from now on. Computers taking over more and more of our lives. So until I find a way to interact with humans only, I'm afraid it really will be chips with everything. Thank you. If I move into a cooler mode, let's start with the bad news. Humour writing is really hard. It is a hard discipline. It is probably, in my opinion, the hardest speech writing discipline we ever do in Toastmasters. John Cleese, and let's face it, he was pretty good at it, used to reckon it took him a full week to write a 6-minute sketch. So, if you're as good as him, you can look forward to something like a day, a minute. Now I thought, well, that's a bit of overkill, until I joined the PSA, the Professional Speakers Association, and the first person I met was a professional stand-up comic. And I said to him, "Oh, what's it like being a stand-up comic?" And he said, "Well, it's just like a day job." He said, "I get up in the morning, 9 o'clock, I do 2 hours of gag telling practice." He said, 11 o'clock, I stop, I have my lunch, I do some writing over the lunchtime. 1 o'clock, I go back, I do another 2 hours of gag telling practice. 3 o'clock, I pack my gig bag and go out for the day. And so the pressure on comedy is almost relentless. And it is tough work. Sometimes you'll get away if you come up with a really funny episode of writing a speech that just comes out of your head. But by and large, it's down to hard work. Now, I'm always happy to offer advice and help when people are writing speeches, but one suggestion is if you want help and advice, get it early. The number of people who ask for advice when they thought of their speech and crafted it out lovingly and sent it to the post, and it's far too late to start deconstructing bits that are in the wrong place and moving it around. If you want help, ask for it early, when it's just a skeleton, when you've got the outline. Because that's the place to start, building a strong outline. And then all the humour hangs off it. So, how do we go about finding funny things? Angela asked me when she came in, what do we start off? Do we start off with a subject? Or do we start off with what the audience are interested in? What do we start off with? Well, just to give you an idea, in that 2009 contest, the titles of the speeches in the contest were Psychology of Swimming, Why There Are No Slow Cows in Leitcham, Online Dating, Creativity, My Electronic Gadgets, Operas, Handbags, and Party Games, Mr. and Mrs. There was a comical party game. So for me, the answer is anything's funny. You can write humour about absolutely anything. Even situations that on the surface appear quite sad and unfortunate incidents still make us laugh. Now, how many of us can avoid laughing when someone walks into a lamppost? Someone? Yeah. I mean, it just looks hilarious. We feel very sorry for the person. We hope they're not hurt, but it looks funny. You can't avoid it. So anything can have humour written around it. And in a sense, that's good news, because I think you have to think where your humour is going to end up. Is the humorous speech contest an end in itself? I say no. It's just a staging point. In fact, always my advice is do not write speeches to win contests. And I know one or two of you are saying that's a bit rich coming from you, Bob. But always, what I've tried to do, ever since 2002 when I won the International, the thing that scared me the most was I suddenly realised I had to write 2 more speeches to go to America. And I didn't know what I'd done that was right to win the district contest. And it was a horrendous time, a horrendous writing time for me. So now as an engineer, what I do and what I'm going to share with you this evening is to try and develop a process so that I've got something consistent to work with. So if it works well, and I do well at a district level contest, I know that I can go out the next day and write something very similar, of a similar standard. And that's important to me. I think it would be important to us, because most of our speaking will probably not be in Toastmasters. We go and speak in other places. We want to know that we can write speeches relative to other audiences with the same technique that we use in Toastmasters. So it's about building a process. What we need is material to start with. Now, where are you going to get that material from? Again, it's coming from Angela's questions. Do you start with the content? Do you start with a funny episode? I say you start by capturing ideas. And what I do, I like to capture my ideas. Most of you nowadays, and I have one of these wretched machines, it has a little pen and stylus on here, so whenever I see things, I can just write it on. But I still would prefer my old-fashioned logbook. I'm an engineer. Engineers' left hands are for carrying logbooks. And when I see things, I put it in there. I don't know if that's going to be any use or not, but I put a DB next to it in a circle. And then sometime later, revealing more of my engineering strategies, I put it into a database or onto a spreadsheet. My spreadsheet is now some 700-800 items long, just for ideas. I don't know when they're going to come up, but every time I have to write a speech, I go and I flick through them and think, is there anything here that's appropriate? When you have flashes of creativity, and I guess that's the bit we're talking about that is so hard to be creative in here. When we have flashes of creativity, don't lose them. Capture them somewhere. They are too valuable to let go. So put them in a database so that you can go back and find a place to slot in. The same is true of speeches. Those of you who've heard me before will probably be getting sick of this line, but record absolutely everything you do. I have a voice recorder strapped on. I have it on every single time I speak. I go home, I lovingly put them into MP3, into an archive, very close to my spreadsheets, and they're thoroughly backed up and offline so that I can't lose them, because they are just like gold dust. So where did the idea for that speech come from? Well, it came from a speech that wasn't terribly good, about 3 or 4 years before. It was called Chips with Everything, because I thought that was a funny title. And it was about getting older and losing our higher brain functions, and me blaming machines for taking away our higher brain functions by progressively doing more of our work. It didn't do terribly well. I think it might have got to area level, and it's stayed there in my archives. And then I saw 1 or 2 other bits, particularly with the mobile phones, bits that I added a bit back sat nav, and then one day I walked into Tesco's and that till was really there. And I thought, I know where that's going. And suddenly all the bits came together, and that's why it's so important to capture them. I'm going to go through a couple of techniques to help you when you've got a blank sheet of paper. But it is so difficult. That is the most difficult part of all writing, to sit there with a blank sheet of paper and say, what am I going to write that's funny? What have I done that's funny? And it all seems so funny at the time, but not when you're trying to write it out as a speech. So, your old speeches, bright ideas you have, they are gold dust. Find a way of harvesting them and keeping them. What if you haven't got too many, or you've got to do a speech and it's a slightly different subject? Well, I've got a couple of ideas to help you. The first one, in fact, there are two ideas, and they both come from a book by a lady called Sally Hollingsworth, and it's called A Serious Guide to Joke Writing. And she's got in there a series of techniques, and if you read her book, she will reinforce the point that this is a process. Abraham Maslow, which probably some of you have heard of. Have you heard of Maslow's hierarchy? Yeah, okay. His wife wanted to be a sculptor, and Maslow happened to have a friend who was a really famous sculptor. So he thought, oh, I'll go along there and get some good tips and give her a head start. So he went along and he said, oh, she wants to be a good sculptor. How is she going to do it? And the friend said, first, she's got to make a whole pile of chips. In other words, there's no right way to be good at that creativity. You've just got to keep tapping away until you learn how to form what you want out of the chips. And speech writing, I think, is the same. You have to write a lot of material. You may only end up using a small percentage of it, but you'll generate quite a lot. Just as I said before, when you generate that information, hang on to it. Every speech we write has two phases. This is not just humour. It has a divergent phase, a bit where we do the refining in the middle, and a convergent phase. When we're in this phase, we're just throwing out ideas. We're trying to put ideas and put them into a sense of order. It doesn't matter how they come. I tend to use whiteboards on the wall. Sometimes I'll do them, particularly if I've got a lot of ideas, I'll put them on post-it notes. And I'll stick them on the board because then I can start to move them about to form the structure that I want. In fact, on one occasion, I found an extra whiteboard and I stood it against the wall in the dining room. And when my wife came in, she said, what's the whiteboard for? And my naughty boys said, oh, Dad's going to replace the tabletop with that so he can work out some speeches while he's eating dinner. And my wife didn't disbelieve them. So out of this, you might only take a small percentage that's any good for a speech. Keep this lot together. I tend to take bits off the internet, wherever I find them. I copy them, I paste them into Word documents, and I archive the Word documents. So I can go back. Not only are they useful for other speeches, but sometimes you'll get asked to deliver the same speech to a different audience. And so you want to customise it. That's a really good time to go back into the archive of the material you wrote at the time and see if there are some more suitable bits to fit in with your new audience. So I say, Sally Hollingsworth, two techniques. The first she calls the joke web. And fundamentally what you do is you start off with your subject, and then out of that, around it, you draw little satellites with words that are key to that subject. So, whatever they are, you want words in here that you associate with that subject. Then, you ignore the subject, you cover it up. And you go to each of the satellites in turn, and you write words that you associate with the satellites only. Don't worry about the subject, just the satellites. And then go back and make as many links as you can between the words on the outside structure and the subject, and see if you can find some humour. Now, out of this, very quickly, if you do it as an example, you'll find you'll probably develop 10, 15 words on there. By the time you put 10 round the outside, you can have 100, 200 different links, and some of them will be funny. I use this to do a stand-up act. I've done some stand-up comedy. I did the stand-up comedy not because I'm interested in being a stand-up comedian, but they have skills that I admire. And I wanted to push myself to write that sort of material so I could migrate it back into normal speaking. So I wrote a set about going to the gym. And in the middle I had gym, and then I put around the outside things that I associated with it. So I had the David Lloyd, because at the time I belonged to David Lloyd. And then around the outside I put all the different ones, so that might be fitness first, Virgin. And then I actually went another stage and I started to write bits down here. When I got to Virgin, I got to airlines and I put in Ryanair. And then I started, and this works particularly well if you pick words that have strong stereotypes. Because I then started to wonder what the gym would be like if it was run by Ryanair. Yes, you see, you've already started laughing because you've got those stereotypes in your mind and you can see what it's like. So any time you go for humour and you pick a strong stereotype, the audience will get the image like that. So they're really powerful words to use. So that's one technique you can use to generate links between what you're doing. The second one, she calls the Hadron Double Joke Collider. And you have subject 1, subject 2, and round the outside, again, you write your little satellites of words. One may be enough, you could go a second level if you wish, and you do the same down subject 2, and then you look for links between the satellites. And very quickly, again, you'll find humour in there by linking the two different subjects, especially if these have strong stereotypes. I've used this also in a slightly different way. If you've got to write a humorous speech after dinner speeches, I'm quite often asked after dinner speeches, what I do is I put my subject in one of them, and then I put the audience in the second circle. And then what I start to do is write everything I know about the audience around the outside, and then on my subject I do the same, and then I look for links between what I know about the audience and what I'm talking about. I used the gym one for a bowls club, and out of that process came the fact that I was talking about going to the gym, and the bloke who was the captain of the club was called Skip. Well, Skip, he could hardly walk. And so I brought that in. Why do they call the person who's the slowest Skip? So just by throwing out what you know about the audience, what you know about the subject, you will find humorous crosses. And this is about building raw material, nothing else. But once we've built the raw material, then we have to start refining it to build in the humour. Once you've seen potentially funny links. And how are we going to make it funny? Well, can I just say as well, I see some of you taking notes, which is absolutely fine. I have written for this a set of summary notes which has got the main key points in there, and I will email that to David or Tony or Mike, whoever wants it, and they can distribute it. So make sure they have your email so they can send it on to you. How are we going to make this funny? There are generally reckoned to be 5 mechanisms to make things laugh. The first is making things extreme. I know some of you believe I do, but I didn't really stand in Tesco's going, I just put that card in the damn machine. That was a gross exaggeration. In the humorous speech final, it got a round of applause, as well as a big laugh, because it just looks so extreme. And when we're talking about extreme, don't use just extreme vocabulary. Make your body language extreme, make your facial expressions extreme. People will instantly recognise the visual humour of your mood if you show them that you're in a special mood. So make everything extreme, and it adds humour. Like with all these tips, it has to be done in moderation and in timing. If you make everything extreme, it just washes into one large extreme show. So it wants to come out at key points to make this extreme. The second one is word plays, or puns as they're called. I'm not quite sure where the difference is. Any of you who like Mock the Week will have seen blokes like Milton Jones. You know, he's extremely good at it, extremely clever. One of his is teachers always face a dilemma. If they stand at the board and write, the children misbehave behind them. If they go to the back, they control the children, but they can't write on the board. And no one solved that, not by a long shot. Two things. Firstly, if you use puns and wordplay, you're likely to get the reaction we just got, the groan. Do not worry about the groan, that's part of the humour, that's the audience respecting the pun. So don't worry if they groan. But the second thing to highlight is I saw Milton Jones live. On Mock the Week, he is brilliant. He's on for about 3 or 4 minutes. On Live at the Apollo, he's brilliant. He's on for 7 minutes. He was on for an hour. And after 15 minutes, he was losing the audience. And that's because it was the same pattern coming out every time. And the audiences are intelligent. Once you use the same pattern several times, they'll start to work out what the pattern is, so they know the punchline before you get there. So again,